Hi, and thank you for listening. This is Sherry Andrea. If you're looking for me, you can find me at sherryspeaks.com. Please feel free to donate, even if it's only $1. It'll help me out to pay things like the hosting cost, domain cost, etc., etc. And I appreciate that. Also, you can find on the website 80 plus Reiki attunements starting at $2.50 and up. Um, Also, the Third Eye Awakening course, which is $25 and includes 2 free coaching sessions. And also, don't forget, we still have a sale on the psychic reading or coaching, whichever one you need. You can either do psychic reading, coaching, or combination. It's $15 for 30 minutes. And you'll see the link on the screen. It's the first one, sherryspeaksnow.simplybook.me. And I will also put the link directly to that sale in the description box. Also, we still have the deep clearings service on the website. If you go to sherryspeaks.com and on the menu, click services, and then you will see the deep clearing. And it is $15. It includes everything from clearing the chakras, clearing the aura, removing attachments, clearing your house, removing promises, vows, deeds, etc., from previous lifetimes, past, present, future, anytime and any place. So it is a really intensive clearing. A lot of people use it in conjunction with the spiritual or metaphysical work they're doing as they're advancing, or maybe they've done a lot of work and they know they need to release some things and get them cleared out of the way, and the clearing does help with that. Okay, so I am going to be doing these videos and I hope you like them. I'm calling it ghost stories, but really what it is experiences with spirit. However, not all people would understand if I put that in the title, like exactly what I'm talking about, what that means. But, most people, they watch movies and TV shows, and, when they hear ghost stories, they kind of understand what that means. So, I'm just for the first time going to explain that. So, I'm going to do, in all the videos, I'm going to do 3 stories in each video so that the video is not too long. Okay, so, oh, by the way, remember to like and subscribe. And after you subscribe, hit the little bell next to the word subscribe, so that you can select all, so that you'll always be notified when I upload a video or when I create a post. Because sometimes if there's a sale going on, I'll create the post to notify you. Or if there's anything else going on, like with the website or anything special, I'll post about it. So let's get to it. Okay. Now, I'm not doing these in any order. So, some people do things like this and they'll save the best story for last, but I didn't go that far. So, I'm just going to do them. They're out of order, and so they're not in any order by importance or anything like that. Okay, let's start with the first one. Okay, this took place when I was first awakening, you could say. I had already, through chakra work, awakened my empathy and my clairsentience a shortly time after began opening all on its own. And so at this time, I had empathy and clairsentience like full blown going on. Back then, I I wasn't working at the time, and so I was trying to save money, and so Okay, I'll admit I was connecting to somebody, and I did have permission. I was connecting to somebody else's internet that lived not too far from me, and but you know how it is when you do that. You have to be as close as possible to where their like internet and modem, their Wi-Fi is. And so I would either, like if my son wasn't home, if he was at school, I would use my computer in his bedroom, or in the evening, I actually used to sit in my hallway, which is closer towards the front of the house. And, I would get a chair to sit my computer on and everything, and I'd be sitting there using my computer because I could get the internet connection. And I was actually sitting there, and as I recall, I was actually, on different websites reading about psychic abilities. And, I was at that time I wanted to know things like different ways to practice, get a better understanding of how certain psychic abilities work. So that's what I was doing at the time. Now, at this time, I was into doing other things like candle work. Like if I knew that somebody was sick or in the hospital, I was still making candles at that time, and I would make a candle and light it. So I was still doing things like that at the time. I was very much into learning about the angels and the ascended masters. So at that time, yeah, I was kind of fully into it. And as I was sitting there using the computer, just all of a sudden, I felt an invisible hand. And I'm saying invisible because I don't want you to think it was an actual person standing behind me. I felt what felt like a person's hand go from the top of my head and rub, you know, caress all the way down the back of my head. Um, Believe me, I did I did it did get me up. This wasn't something where I was just like, oh, okay, then that happened. No, I wasn't. It did freak me out. Some of you may think, oh, well, that wasn't so bad. Yeah, because once you get used to not only your psychic abilities, but you get used to different experiences that you're having with spirit, some of these things don't come off as being such a big deal. But at the time, for me, being so new to everything, it was a huge deal. Um, Out of the blue and unexpecting it, not expecting it at all. Of course, yes, I jumped up real quick. I moved my computer, I put my computer away, I put the chair I had it sitting on away, I put the chair I was sitting on away, and I was really, really freaked out because I was just like, what was that? Who was that? Um, Definitely, you could tell the way it happened. There was no mistaking that it was a hand that rubbed my head, but it was more in a caressing way. Like, imagine if you're somebody who cared about you, your mother or your husband or your wife walked up behind you and they kind of caressed your head, like in a loving kind of a way, a loving, supportive way. That's what it was like. Okay, now on to story number two. When I used to, around that same time, shortly after, I used to go on a psychic message board all the time, and I was a member of it. I was also a manager, one of the managers in the chat room, and this became a daily thing for me. When people talk about feeling lonely because they don't really have anybody to talk to, discuss the things that they're now interested in. So if now they're interested in metaphysics and spirituality and like feeling like I don't really have anybody to talk to because my existing friends I had aren't into that. So what I'm into now, I don't have anybody to talk to about it. I hear that often, and it was the same way for me. But what kind of filled that void was being a member of that message board. I looking back, I would consider it to be an important part of my development. Yeah, it turned out to be very important. And so this was like a daily thing. This was a morning, afternoon, and evening thing. And I got to the point where I greatly, greatly look forward to it. Now, sometimes we would have scheduled a time where many of us would get together in the chat room to either do energy healings, like where as a group we would all be sending out energy for healing, or sometimes something specific towards a specific person. Um, we would sometimes also get together to practice mediumship. And we would, there would be a set time that we would set up certain days. So, certain days I knew, and I want to say it was 2 days a week where we would get together in the chat room to do the energy clearing. Um, this thing started happening all the time. Now, keep in mind, I was very into reading about the archangels, the ascendant masters, and I would often practice not only with them, but practice because I was trying to learn discernment at the time. It was very important to me at that time to learn discernment because, like, kind of as a newbie, it's like your question often is, well, how am I going to know, if I'm in contact and communicating with a spirit, that that's a spirit that's of the light and that it's not something bad. So that's why I was so into practicing learning to feel what certain angels and ascendant masters felt like, where they would make noise when I would call on them. Like, for example, Archangel Michael always shows up to my rear left. Wait, yeah, behind me to my left. Um, so I can actually tell you for all the angels and ascendant masters that I used to work with, where they would show up at, where they would make noise. And many of them would always make sure to make noise as like a way to let me know, yeah, we're here. Because keep in mind, I'm calling on them. This isn't a random thing where I'm just waiting for them to show up. No, I was actually calling them forward, asking them to come close enough so that I could feel their energy. That, because they all have a different vibratory level, they all have a different feel, what their energy feels like, and trying to get to know, to recognize them. This also had to do with trying to get to recognize when I was picking up and feeling an energy that wasn't good, wasn't positive, because that was the point. Is that you kind of want to know if something bad is showing up, especially when you're involved in practicing metaphysics and spirituality in the way that I was. So since we had it scheduled, same 2 days, like let's imagine it was a Tuesday and a Thursday where we would show up in the chat room at a certain time to either do mediumship, practicing mediumship, or practicing using psychic abilities, or what we did most often was the energy work, sending out energy. Well, sometimes spirit is really on board with what you're doing because it's a positive thing. It's a thing that is good for humanity and for the universe in general. And so spirit often is very on board with that, the angels and ascended masters, and they often show up to help out when you do things like this. And what started happening is about, like, let's say 5 to 10 minutes before it was time to log in and go in the chat room, one slat on my vertical blinds would start moving wildly and hitting the glass. Now, someone may want to say, oh, well, it was probably just the wind, or you probably just had your ceiling fan on. Nope. Nope. I would turn everything off. The sliding glass door would be closed, so no wind. I would have the ceiling fan off, so no breeze from that. I would literally check to make sure there was nothing that could cause that. But even if I did have the ceiling fan on, explain to me why it would be just one slat moving. And when I say wildly, I don't mean fast. I'm talking about the distance it was moving in and out. Just one slat while the others were perfectly still. I'm always talking about how, the angels and the ascended masters have the energy and vibratory strength to do almost anything. Anything. Even affect your technical devices like your computer, your phone. Make the alarm on your phone go off when no alarm is set. I always talk about that. So they would be really like, hey, let's go, let's do this. We're ready. We're here. We're ready. And that would happen almost every time. And there were other instances when it would also happen. Sometimes I would be sitting on my sofa and practicing working with one of the angels or ascended masters, and that would happen. The slat would start moving. Now, really, honestly, I don't want to really in these stories get into naming it, like saying who I think it is, because everybody's experience is different, and how a person, when they have certain abilities, pick up on what it is, who it is always different. So I'm not going to go that far as to tell you who it is that was doing that. But yeah, it was when it first started happening, it was a little bit, I'll admit, a little bit nerve wracking. It did make me a little bit nervous when it first started happening. But then over time, I got used to, things like this. Movement of things in the house, noises being made. I know it sounds like I'm talking about a poltergeist or something, but I'm not. I'm not. Some of you may be like, "Ooh, you need to clear your house." No, it's not that. Because believe me, back then, my house couldn't have been any more clear. And with all of the, I mean, a Christian might want to say that, but with all of the spiritual work I was doing, the praying, the decreeing, and everything, my house was very clear. And yes, I tested it. I can tell you that for a fact because I've had friends that had amazing abilities to do things like remote view, out of body experience, where I could actually have them come to my house and tell me what they saw. Um, and so I know that for a fact. I'm not just guessing. Okay, so let's move on to the last one. Um, okay, so this one involves my son and his grandfather on his father's side. There was a time, this was when my son was real young and was still like sleeping with me. Um, and at some point, his father's father had died. And from that point on, and we don't even ask me how I knew because back then, I was, learning to use my abilities and everything. And I do have the ability of just knowing. So often, um, things would come to me, like I would just know things, and later on they would be, validated. But I can't tell you how I knew that his father's father had died, but I did. And it was validated. Um, Couple times, but it was validated twice later on. So, what would happen was no sooner than we would get in the bed, and we always had this routine. We would get in the bed and we'd watch a little bit of TV. Like back then, like maybe, whatever was on for kids, Nickelodeon or something like that. We would watch for probably about maybe no more than a half an hour, and during it, my son would fall asleep. So what began happening was no sooner did we get in the bed to do our, getting ready to go to bed nightly routine, that we would feel somebody sit at the foot of the bed. And this wasn't something where it was just like, um, where you couldn't tell, where you weren't quite sure. No, this was really obvious. Imagine if it was, I don't know, a man of 200 pounds sitting at the foot of your bed. Imagine, yeah, you'd feel that if you were laying in the bed and you had your eyes closed, and a man of about 200 pounds sat at the foot of your bed, you're going to feel that when he sits down. That happened every night for so long that we actually just got used to it. It was just like, okay, there he goes again. And this was a nightly thing, but I will admit, after, I know you're going to be like, you let it go on that long. After a couple months of this, I don't know, I started to feel differently about it. I started to feel like, you know what? I need to do something about this. I need to take care of this. So I had a friend that I had met in the chat room of the message board I was a member of, and she had really great abilities. She had really, really great abilities, and I asked for her help one evening, and I explained to her what had been going on and everything. And so she was really great at mediumship. She used her abilities, and I didn't tell her anything. You know what I mean? Like, when you get a psychic reading and you ask a question, but you try not to give you like too much like leading information. Okay, so I told her what was happening. I didn't tell her anything about, believing or thinking I knew who it was or anything. I just told her the experience that was happening, and that, it had been going on for a while, but I was starting to kind of feel like, maybe I need to do something about this. And in fact, she quickly connected to who it was, and I talked to her. It was in the evening when I talked to her. So I'm not going to get into the explanations of the ins and outs of how things work when you're dealing with either a discarnate spirit or a spirit on the other side. This isn't for instructional purposes, or this isn't really to teach you that. But so the information she was able to give me was, she did validate who it was. She said, I remember how she described it and explained it, and she was like, "Oh, Sherry, he's coming across as such a sweet, nice man, and he's saying that he didn't get to know your son in life, and that he just wanted to get to know him. But here's the thing: this is how I could tell that." He hadn't crossed over since he died, is because he kept repeatedly telling her to tell her to get the money. And she said, it seems like he's trying to say that there is some money that was like available after he died. Like she was like, I don't know if this, we're talking insurance policy or something like that. But she says he just keeps repeating, get the money, get the money. And that's, of course, how I could tell, because when a spirit doesn't cross over, they're still grounded in earthly concerns. It isn't, they don't let go of that. That doesn't leave them until they actually cross over. Um, so after she helped me with that, within the next couple of days is when I made the decision to call on the angels and ascended masters to help him cross over um, into the light, so to speak. And he did. And, I always, whenever I did that, whenever I crossed spirits over that, you know, somehow ended up at my house, I would always tell them, I would be like, you don't have to be afraid, because I always knew there's got to be something that's holding you back from having naturally crossed over. There's got to be something that's stopping you, where you're purposely choosing not to cross over. And I would always explain there is nothing to be afraid of. And I would say, I'll call on, Jesus and Archangel Michael to help you find the way. And then I would explain to them, don't worry, because once you cross over, you do whatever healing you need to do, you will be allowed to come back and visit. When actually the reality is, it's not a given that they can come back and visit. And this is what many people getting mediumship readings don't really understand, is that just because you want a loved one to show up doesn't mean they can. There are reasons why they may not be able to show up, such as they're in the process of reincarnating, or for whatever reason, they don't have permission to visit. And I know some of you are saying, well, why wouldn't they? Is this like no, I'm not talking about like they're being punished, like you can't go. No, it's not about that. It's about there are different reasons. Maybe they're not going to be incarnating, but they're going to be doing something important, acting as a guide to someone, and maybe that's very important and it's going to take all of their attention, or maybe they're going to be working as a guide that's offering protection for someone, in which case that's a very important task to do. But there are reasons why sometimes when spirits cross over, why they can't come back and visit, which is okay, because mediumship wise, I mean, you can still read that energy. That energy still exists. And that is the point of mediumship, is to prove, one of the reasons, to prove continuity of life. And so that energy still exists and still can be read. So anyway, it's like a reminder that it's not like you see on the movies. It's however, it can be, your experience with spirit can be very physical, because they have the energy to do certain things, be heard, be felt, make impressions, like when sitting on the bed. Many people that have had pets that have passed away have talked about feeling them rub up against their leg when they're sitting, in a chair. They like literally feel them rubbing up against their leg, like this invisible cat or dog. And I've had that experience with my dog too, where it literally, like sometimes at night, I would literally hear the sound, like it sounded like she laid down outside my door, and my door would be closed, and sometimes she would get up out of her bed and come lay down next to my door, and you hear that little thud when she laid down against the door. After she died, I would hear that, and I knew she was around for a while. But anyway, those are the 3 stories for today. Definitely, if you like this and you want me to keep doing it, I will. Keep sharing the spirit experiences. I will do that. Please just comment and let me know, in the comments, if you'd like me to do more of these. And I definitely will. I appreciate your listening. I hope you have an awesome day or evening. Talk to you soon. Namaste.